It might not seem like it right now, but these JRPGs are going to be huge cult hits one day. Hey, it's Just the Gems. I'm Brandon, and I'm drawn to games that sort of fly under the radar. There are giant AAA releases like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and don't get me wrong, I love those too, but there's a special place in my heart for games that most JRPG players aren't paying attention to upon release. These games are never perfect. I mean, no game is perfect, but they often have slightly bigger issues than the giant titles. But these issues are easily overlooked because of everything else they bring to the table. 10 or 15 years down the road, YouTube is going to be full of younger gamers who are extolling the virtues of these games and being absolutely befuddled that us old-timers didn't give them the love they deserved. So let's look at 10 games from the modern era that are destined to be cult classics a few years down the road once people discover how awesome they are. I feel like there was a lot of hype when this one was revealed. I mean, it was a new Mana game. Finally. Sure, we'd gotten re-releases and a cool remake, but this was like a brand new Mana. And then it came out and it was awesome, but nobody played it. And I'm still extremely confused as to why that was. The first thing you'll notice about this is the amazing art direction. It's not going for realism and it's not going for full cartoony, but it's settling down in this beautiful space somewhere in between. The characters have some exaggerated features, but it's not silly. It's artsy, but not like in a pretentious way. Not like the way I am. No, it's just got the coolest, chillest vibes, which do a wonderful job of contrasting with the frankly dark as hell storyline. Seriously, I did not come into this game expecting a heart-wrenching story about self-sacrifice and loss and betrayal. Some moments in this story are genuinely shocking. I also found the combat extremely fun. It uses a job system similar to other games in the series and the genre overall, and each character and each class feels distinct. You'll have some that you like to play as more than others, but there's more than enough variety to ensure you have a good time. If you were sleeping on this game, either because you heard middling reviews or it just fell off your radar, I'm basically imploring you to give it a chance. It's a gorgeous and unique action RPG that is very deserving of attention. It'll get there someday. I just like to make that day come as soon as possible. I loved the Digimon anime when I was a kid. I've had the Digimon show theme song stuck in my head for like 25 years, and I'm not mad about it. Digimon are digital monsters, and they are the champions, and I won't hear any arguments to the contrary. Also, I taught myself how to play it on the melodica. Thanks for indulging me. Anyway, I didn't stick with the series in any form. As I got older, I started associating Digimon with Pokemon, meaning I assumed it was a baby game for babies, and that I, a big tough guy, wouldn't be interested. Turns out I was a big dummy, shocking no one. Digimon Story Time Stranger is a story-centric JRPG with all the monster gathering gameplay that people who like monster gathering gameplay enjoy, but coupled with a plot and presentation that just elevate it far above every other competitor it has. You are a voiceless protagonist who works for a secret government agency that is aware of the existence of Digimon, and you find yourself thrust into a time-traveling escapade with a high school girl and a little goat boy named Aegis. Escapade might be downplaying it, actually, because this game's story gets pretty dark and twisted. This isn't for kids, guys. They even say swears sometimes. Like light swears, TVPG stuff. But still, Pokemon this is not. The combat is turn-based and relies on a surprisingly deep enemy weakness system to differentiate itself. Well, that and the plethora of different Digimon you can create. As cool as the combat is, I really think the dark tone of the story is the most appealing aspect of this one. There's a really great juxtaposition of goofiness with dire seriousness. Like, it's a story that takes itself seriously, but it's okay with the fact that you're likely to sort of find certain things hilarious, even though they might not seem like they should be. This made a decent splash for a Digimon game, but far too many people aren't bothering to give it a try just because it's part of the Digimon series. Let me tell you what I only just learned. Digimon is the monster collecting series that grew up with its audience. It's not trying to appeal to young kids. It was for us back in the day, and it's still for us now. Uh-oh, Brandon's talking about Harvestella again. Take a drink. It's true, there's a drinking game where you do a shot every time I bring this game up. I advise against playing that drinking game because alcohol poisoning is real and it affects thousands of people every year. But if I'm really making a list like this, Harvestella has to be on it. It's the quintessential overshadowed JRPG. A lot of its overshadowing was due to the marketing. I think Square Enix made a calculated choice to direct this at cozy farm sim fans, and in a way that made sense. That was a very big corner of the market, especially at the time. The problem was it wasn't farmy enough for the farm fans. It's really just an action RPG that has some farm elements thrown in. Anyway, it doesn't matter because the real reasons to play this game have very little to do with how it plays, which I would describe as fine. No, this is a game that excels in every other area. Story, music, design. It's an absolutely gorgeous masterpiece of a game. It was a Switch 1 release, and naturally, it wasn't pushing the most polys. Definitely not looks maxing from a raw horsepower perspective. But it more than makes up for that with its genius art design. Seriously, look at this stuff. It just oozes with style. Couple that with a legendary soundtrack that remains one of my favorites of all time, and a story that kept me gasping in shock through most of its runtime, and you have an underrated gem that deserves all the squawking about it that I do. And then some. Omori has a small but dedicated fan base, and I can understand why. Both why that dedicated fan base is so dedicated and why it's not a big mainstream hit. It's presented as a sort of Earthbound clone, at least in terms of its raw aesthetics. Modern day JRPG starring kids, lots of quirky monsters to fight, oddball humor, but just below the surface, this is a dark, dark game. It tackles some of the heaviest material you can possibly put in a video game, and it does it unflinchingly. The narrative is split between a fantasy world and reality. In the fantasy, you are Omori, a little boy spending time in a magical land with all his friends. In reality, you are Sunny, an older boy who's been housebound for a long time and who is just now finally taking the first steps toward re-emerging into the world, only to find so much of it has changed while you were gone. Even if you galaxy brain it and are able to figure out exactly where the main plot is going, I don't think it really matters. It's still going to hit you hard because the impact is in far more than any twist. It's all the themes, the presentation, the style, everything rolls up into this experience that will just affect you. It'll affect you. And that's the mark of powerful storytelling. The combat is some of the most inventive and fun in modern JRPGs, with character and enemy emotions playing a big role in strategy. Characters with certain emotions will be strong against characters with other emotions, and using items and skills to affect your team's and the enemy's mood is key. Even setting aside the creativity of the combat system, it just looks beautiful. This is an aesthetic masterpiece of a game. It's dark, it's heavy, it comes with every trigger warning you might find on any college literature course, but it's absolutely worthy of a much bigger audience. And someday soon, I think it's bound to get that. A couple of the entries on this list strain my definition of JRPG a little bit, and this is one of them. It's really more of a visual novel or adventure game with some real-time strategy elements, but I think on the Weeb Venn diagram, it falls pretty squarely in the overlap, so it's worth discussing. 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim is the story of 13 people and a bunch of mechs. That's a little bit reductive, but I really don't want to say much because the storyline is truly the most inspired part of this whole experience. A lot of people I've talked to who have played it also seem to have really enjoyed the gameplay, which I'm happy for them. But for me, the strategy elements were just an obstacle to be overcome in order to get back to the plot. You'll play through chapters of each character's story separately, and at certain points, your progress will be gated until you clear enough of the combat sections. But even though I didn't love the combat, I was extremely motivated to play through them because 13 Sentinels has what might be the coolest science fiction story I've experienced in pretty much any media. It's got time travel and alien robots and giant mechs. It's a completely non-linear narrative, and you might be afraid that would make it difficult to follow. I had that fear myself when I started. But somehow the genius telling this story is able to keep everything coherent. I never felt lost except when I was supposed to. Nothing felt out of place in the story, and each new twist and turn caught me off guard. I seriously haven't had this much fun experiencing a raw story like this in a long time. It's a really pretty game to look at too. Vanillaware doesn't mess around with their art style. It's just a fantastic package, and more people should be talking about it. Gust, as a JRPG developer, is already sort of a cult classic in its own right. Their Atelier series is relatively popular, but the word relatively is doing a lot of heavy lifting there, since Atelier is a niche within the already niche JRPG market. But a niche within a niche within a niche would be their Blue Reflection games. These are turn-based RPGs with elements of grandiose combat system that feature magical girls, chill vibes, and world-ending monstrosities the likes of which H.P. Lovecraft could not have conceived. So yeah, it's pretty niche. Blue Reflection was a solid start to the series, and Blue Reflection's Second Light is everything a sequel should be and more. It took everything good about the first game, multiplied it by 10, took everything bad about the first game, reworked it or got rid of it, and it put it all together with a bunch of excellent new ideas to create what feels like the perfect JRPG sequel. Bigger, better, and more. In this game, you play as Ao, a girl who wakes up in a school building she doesn't recognize, which is located on an island she's never been to, and she's trapped there with other girls who also have no idea what's going on. Turns out they're all reflectors, basically magical girls with the power to beat back the incomprehensible forces that exist beyond the veil of reality. They also enjoy snacking, swimming, and sleepovers. Seriously, the vibes alone in this game are absolutely stunning. The lighting, the music, it's sort of sleepy and ethereal, while also just slightly off-putting, just enough to make you want to keep exploring and learn more. The battle system, like I said, borrows from Grandia, where you'll want to time your attacks in order to interrupt enemies, and it's so fast that at first I thought I'd be overwhelmed by it, but it's actually very intuitive and starts to feel like second nature as you play. Fortunately, I think this game and the whole series has a second chance to shine, since Gust is releasing Blue Reflection Quartet, which is a collection of all the Blue Reflection that's been released so far. If you're at all curious, be sure that one's on your radar. Speaking of Quartet, if you're talking about games that get overshadowed, you could populate infinite lists with worthy indie games. It's so incredibly hard to get attention in the video game world, even when your game is remarkable. So while Quartet might be a success in the realm of indies, it still just has not gotten as much love as it deserves. Quartet feels like a perfect marriage of Live Alive and Final Fantasy VI, but it carries itself so much further beyond any legacy comparisons by nature of its fantastic writing, complex characters, and engaging battles. Visually, it's got that picture-perfect pixel style that appeals to gamers of a certain age like me, but I do think it's just plain pretty, even setting nostalgia aside. The game begins with a choice. You can pick between one of 4 characters and play through their story. When you're done, you'll come back to the beginning and choose the next. This is the Quartetness of Quartet. Each of the stories involves 2 major characters, and after you've finished all 4 introductions, the second act begins as all 8 characters assemble and face the real threat that's been running behind the scenes all along. The storytelling is brilliant. It gives you ample opportunities to get to know the characters, and even when they're all together and the plot is moving forward, it still makes time for them to talk to each other. This furthers their development, and it's something I wish more JRPG writers would make space for. Let your characters talk to each other, even if it's not specifically about what's going on in the story. It endears the audience to them, it fleshes out the world, and it's just realistic. The combat is fun and straightforward, but strategic. You'll have access to all 8 characters in combat, but only 4 will be on the front lines. Swapping characters in real time into the back will allow them to regenerate magical power, so a big part of the strategy involves developing a rhythm of swapping characters in and out at the right times. Quartet has been available for some time now, but it's newly released on the Switch, so if that's your primary platform and you haven't picked this up yet, now's the time. Another one that stretches the definition of JRPG a bit, though I stand by calling it one, Ariana and the Elder Codex is a 2D action RPG platformer with a surprisingly deep lore and story. The basic premise sounds like a children's book almost. There are these old books that brought magic into the world and someone has altered them, rendering them unusable. And that means the world is suddenly without magic. The only person who can set things right is Ariana because she has the unique ability to jump inside each of the books and correct the problems from within. But where the game gets deep is in the lore surrounding everything that goes on. The story is nice and subtle about it, and if you don't care about the story, there's still plenty to enjoy here, but there is just a ton of information available to you about the world and its history if you go looking for it. Character dialogue reveals bits and pieces of information that won't affect your actual gameplay, but will make the world feel so much more fully realized. It's funny how putting in that effort can make a story with such an out there premise feel realistic. The gameplay involves making your way through each magical book and correcting correcting errors throughout. This usually involves battling hordes of monsters using Ariana's enormous variety of magic. Truly, the repertoire of magic spells you get in this game makes the combat so incredibly fun. There are just so many spells, and each one of them is so unique and useful in different situations. You can only carry a certain number of spells at once though, so deciding on your loadout prior to diving in is important. Fighting enemies feels super satisfying too. Monsters all have a stun meter, and when you deplete it, it causes your magic to overflow, hitting other monsters in the area. That hit can then cause an overflow on those monsters, and the chain reaction grows. You just feel so freaking powerful in this game. But it also presents a solid challenge, particularly in the latter half of the game. This wasn't released with all the fanfare it deserved, so you'd be forgiven for completely missing it. But now you have no excuse. If you're at all interested in action platformer RPGs, definitely check this one out. The biggest thing Octopath Traveler 0 had going against it is that it was based on a mobile game. Not that it was a port of a mobile game, or that it was some free-to-play gotcha slop masquerading as a console game, just that it was based on a mobile game. See, what Square Enix did with this Octopath prequel is take the storyline and characters and overall premise of the mobile title, Octopath Traveler Champions of the Continent, and turn it into a fully fledged console JRPG experience. Nothing of its mobile DNA remains. So if people were turned off by its origins, I just have to say, get right. Just get right, guys. Octopath Traveler 0 is what I wish Octopath Traveler 2 had been. While Octopath 2 took what worked in the original and iterated on it, gave us Octopath 1 but a bit better, Octopath 0 takes a much bolder approach to moving the series forward by changing not just the combat system, but the story structure. It's not so changed that you can't still see where it came from, but it's a meaningful step forward and away from the safety of what worked before, and I respect the hell out of that. In Octopath 0, you create a main character who functions as your avatar, and then you'll proceed to engage in some of the most gut-wrenching stories that have ever been told in games. Just when you think the cute little sprites couldn't possibly be going through this horrible stuff, surely you must be mistaken. The game says, nope. It really is as bad as it looks. These dark stories have always been a staple of the series, and that continues here, but I would argue the intensity is turned up even more. Since you have a single main character rather than choosing among 8, you will directly engage in every story, which is another big change for the series. It makes the entire affair feel a lot more connected, which was surprising to me. Even having a voiceless avatar as a consistent anchor managed to make the storyline more cohesive. The combat system is also pretty radically overhauled, and also largely the same as in the past. The biggest change is that you can now have 8 characters in battle at one time, doubling what it used to be. 4 will be in the front row fighting and 4 in the back, but you can quickly and easily swap characters in real time. I'll also say, and maybe this is a result of having more characters, or maybe it's something else in the balancing of the combat, but Octopath 0 doesn't feel as grindy as the previous games, and that's an extremely welcome change in my book. I'm hoping the word spreads that this just isn't some cheap mobile slop cash-in. It's a full-on Octopath Traveler game, and in my opinion, it's the best one they've made yet. More people need to pick this one up. Waifus in Wonderland? Sure, call it that if you want. But as it turns out, Mary Skelter Nightmares is a pretty weird and compelling game. The premise here is kind of hard to explain, and sort of gross to explain too. I'm gonna try and do it without making anyone sick. See, essentially, the world has been taken over by some force, not clear if it's aliens or some ancient slumbering evil or what. All we know for sure is that the city of Tokyo has been swallowed up by some sort of living entity known as the jail. Your main character is Jack, who's been locked up inside the jail with his friend Alice. Alice, it turns out, is something called a blood maiden. This means that the blood of monsters makes her powerful. The issue is that too much of that blood makes her go absolutely insane. What makes Jack unique is his blood seems to calm down the Blood Maidens for some reason. What follows is an adventure to escape the jail as you gather more Blood Maidens into your group. The story is truly unhinged, and I found it just incredibly fun and bizarre. Besides the crazy storytelling though, there's a lot of really compelling gameplay too. This is a dungeon crawler a la Etrian Odyssey, meaning you'll move through a dungeon in first person, one square at a time, gradually filling out your map. When you get into a battle, you'll direct each of the Blood Maidens to attack. As blood flies, the girls will get more fired up and therefore more powerful. Let things go too far though, and they reach something called blood Skelter, which means they've fully gone insane and are just as likely to kill each other as they are the enemies. Utilizing Jack's turn during combat to manage each of the girls' bloodlust is vital, because while having one girl enter blood Skelter is pretty bad, having more than one girl enter Blood Skelter is absolutely deadly. It's a really fun balance of team management and strategic turn-based combat. Honestly, it's nuts that more people haven't given this game a shot. I think it has a reputation, being that it's from Idea Factory, that it's somehow gooner slop. But I promise you, it's so much more than that. And even though I've said the word blood like 50 times in this segment, it's actually not very gory. The blood's all pink when you do see it, which at least for me, sucks all the ick out of it. This is a real hidden gem and definitely one you should check out. There you go. 10 games that are absolute hidden gems and that will absolutely be discovered not too long from now by a wider audience. If you want to get a jump on all those youngins, go ahead and play them now. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Oh, and be sure to check out my podcast, the JRPG Pursuit. We talk all about JRPGs every single week. The link for that is down in the description. Until next time, take care.